Hey guys, welcome back. Today's lecture on Wednesday, May 6th. Um, so I think we're going to finish the lecture today. It looks like we have just a few more slides left. I think I can get through them, so we're going to knock it out. We will have a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m., and I do want everybody there for that. I'll give you the final plan for how we're going to finish the last 4 or 5 days of school. So please make that. I need you guys there. So anyways, getting started here, I'll go ahead and show you the essential question. Why did Mikhail Gorbachev win a Nobel Peace Prize for the Soviet Union falling apart? So spoiler there, Soviet Union falls apart and it ends. Hopefully you knew that by the fact that there is no Soviet Union today. It is Russia again. But Gorbachev wins a Nobel Peace Prize for it. Now, never in a million years would someone have guessed that a Soviet or Russian leader would win a Nobel Peace Prize. But like I said yesterday, Gorbachev is a different breed. He was not the typical Soviet premier. So getting started, in 1987, President Reagan and Gorbachev signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or INF as it was known. To further de-escalate nuclear tensions, they both decided to completely eliminate the intermediate, or also known as medium-range nuclear missiles that had been stationed in Europe, because both countries had strategically placed nuclear missiles in Europe. The U.S. had nuclear missiles in West Berlin to be used in case of emergency against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had nuclear missiles all over Eastern Europe. And this included the most technologically advanced and expensive of nuclear weapons in the Soviet SS-20s and the U.S. Pershing II missiles. Those were missiles that were immediately threatening to both sides and would for sure engage both countries in a war of mass destruction, mutually assured destruction, to be sure. So this was a huge step in lessening both countries' tensions. The U.S. wanted to continue to soften the Soviet Union. I don't mean that in like a negative way. I mean, they wanted them to not be such a big aggressive bear that they seemed to be for the last 40 years. And the Soviets agreed to do it because the U.S. would also be getting rid of nuclear weapons, and it fit the Soviets because they could hardly afford to keep up anyways. So they thought, hey, this is a great way to stay even in power and possibly save a little bit of the money that we were running out of so quickly. So that's the INF, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Now, by this time, the Soviet Union is losing power. East Europe is going through many different uprisings. So Gorbachev renounces the Brezhnev Doctrine, which, if you remember, the Brezhnev Doctrine pledged that the Soviets would protect their interest in Eastern Europe, meaning any kind of countries uprising from communist power, the Soviets would move in to put it down. Gorbachev goes back on that and says, we're not going to do that. We can't afford to do it. We're not going to draw this out. We're not going to turn this in to some huge war. We're not going to go down in a blaze of fury. So that opens the door. Any countries that want to be released from the Eastern Bloc, now's your time. Well, Hungary takes that opportunity and they open its border with Austria, which allow East Germans mobility and allow more people from Eastern Bloc countries to go to the West where there's democratic freedom. And then people start to demonstrate, well, we don't want to leave. We want to reform our governments here. And so demonstrations follow, and piece by piece, Eastern Europe begins to, I wouldn't say fall apart, but change. Communism starts to fall out and democracy rises up. And with it, the Berlin Wall comes down on November 9th, 1989. After demonstrations on both sides, people clamoring for it to be taken down, people even bringing sledgehammers and trying to take the wall out themselves. Eventually, the government just decides to take it down with machinery. You can see the masses of people on both sides of the wall, and they're just deconstructing the wall there. And for the first time in nearly 30 years, people might be able to see family members on the other side that they hadn't seen. So, huge development in Eastern Europe. And the balance of power is shifting back to the U.S. With the fall of Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union loses its grip. There you see people that can't wait for the wall to be torn down, or at least the wall section that they're standing in front of, so they're literally just climbing on it, which was allowed. There was no East German guards to scare them off or shoot them out. So celebrations occur. I mean, news cameras are all over that place, and it was a huge event, absolutely massive event in world history. And this leads to German unification in 1990. The U.S., what was left of the Soviet Union, Great Britain, France, and both East and West Germany agree to end the occupation of both the Soviet Union and the U.S. and Great Britain and France in Germany. All those countries are now going to remove their military influence and their government influence, and they're going to unify Germany as one country. They think, well, this is far enough in the past that World War II is not going to happen again. There's new leadership. There's not any kind of vendetta of the German people, and that's proven true. Germany's just another European country now, but they are reunified. Now, that's the last slide. And you're probably thinking, I didn't really answer the question yet. Well, Gorbachev wins the Nobel Peace Prize because if you think of any of the past Soviet leaders that we knew about, if you think of really any leader in the world, even an American president, if you think of a situation where a country's falling apart and your power is being taken from you and you're watching it happen, almost every one of them would have done something, mobilized his military, threatened the use of violence in order to maintain power and maintain their public image and respect. And it could have very easily turned bloody. This was known as the Velvet Revolution because it was sweet. Like if you've had any kind of velvet dessert, there was no death. I mean, maybe there was an accidental death somewhere, but there was no military deployment. There was no violence. These were all nonviolent revolutions, nonviolent overthrows in Eastern Europe. And they were nonviolent because Gorbachev chose to let it happen. Stalin would have for sure mobilized military and killed people in order to maintain his power. Khrushchev, Brezhnev, all those guys would have done everything in their power, risked millions of lives in order to maintain the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev chose to let it fall peacefully and let the people choose what they want. If the people want democracy, then let them have democracy. If the people want communism, then let them have communism. He chose to let his own people, the Russian people, the communists around the world, he chose to let them think that he was a fool and that he was weak. Gorbachev is still alive today. Now, he's quite old. He's still alive today. And in the Western world, in the US, and Great Britain, France, Germany, Gorbachev is a hero. Gorbachev is a man that chose to rule morally and not become corrupt and power hungry. In Russia, he's controversial. The further along we get, the more people more people in Russia come around to accepting him as a maybe not a hero, but as a positive figure in their history. But immediately after, he was vilified. He was when Russia becomes an independent country again, no more Soviet Union. When Russia is reestablished, he is not invited to run for office. They felt he'd shamed himself. Today, the people that still don't like him, they're mostly the Russians that place their own national pride and power ahead of like happiness. Like there are people in America that feel that way. Like they'd rather us be, by far the most powerful nation in the world than us being peaceful and happy and satisfied at home. That's kind of how those are the people in Russia that still don't care for Gorbachev. My high school history teacher, Mr. Hermerstein, who's the reason why I follow this profession, before I got to high school, he spent 1 year teaching. He was on sabbatical, is what they call it. He went and spent a year teaching in Russia at a Russian school. And he loved it. He thought it was awesome. But he said he gained such a valuable understanding and appreciation of Russian history and of the Cold War, specifically Gorbachev. He says Gorbachev's one of his biggest heroes in world history, in human history. Says that man does not get enough credit for what he did. And the more I research, the more I agree. That could have been a catastrophic event, and he chose to let morality rule instead of ego. And I believe that all of that is why he wins a Nobel Peace Prize. Gorbachev ends up becoming, like I think I said yesterday, he becomes really good friends with President Reagan because he worked with him. They didn't get in this giant pissing match. They tried to settle disputes, and when Gorbachev realized the Soviet Union was past the point of saving, he let it go. He let the people live, and he let them choose. I think that's what makes a great leader. So that is the end of the Cold War. We have now reached the end of the school year's lectures. Hooray. You did it. You will answer today's question of the day. Or not question, essential question. And that will be it. You can turn it in once you finish. Once you answer this one. Today, I will probably also go ahead and assign the study guide, so you can work on that. I'll give you a couple days to work on that, and then I will assign our final assignment shortly after. So tomorrow, Zoom meeting, 11 a.m. I want everybody there. And then we will be darn near finished. We are getting close, guys. Very close. So make the most of these days that are left. Hey, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Email me if you have any questions. But other than that, have a terrific day.